Okay, so this is take 3 because I ramble too much. I'm only going to discuss the contents of this video. Firemaking is very just... Nobody really likes to train it because it's click intensive. There's a lot of wait time when you're running between the bank and where you start firemaking. And like I said, it's click intensive. Nobody likes to train skills that are click intensive and don't have decent rewards, which, let's face it, firemaking really doesn't have any rewards unless you use very cheap logs and don't mind training slowly, because you could argue that based on the price of X log, it's cheaper to get the Inferno ads with 92 firemaking than it is to get a dragon hatchet, and you'd be right to say so in most cases, but you still have to consider that with the amount of time that you lose, it would be faster to just buy the dragon hatchet. So the only reason to get the ads is if you also want to get firemaking experience while you woodcut. Anyway, what you need to do for this method is have a stack of Varrock teleport tabs. I prefer to keep mine to the left of my tinderbox just because it's awkward with the pattern I firemake in to try and reach over there. And tinderbox should be toward the center of your inventory because it reduces the amount of time between the extremes of your logs. Like, looking at putting the tinderbox in the center to any extreme corner, not very much movement required, as opposed to if it's up here, look at how much movement you have to go through. So there's that. Interesting thing about the collect interface, where you should either buy your logs and then throw them back up for resale and cancel the offer if you, for some reason, collected them, or ideally you would buy your logs and leave them in the collection box. You would right-click, withdraw items. It doesn't save any time over withdrawing all or withdrawing X or whatever, but the important thing about this is that you can still break a teleport tablet while you're in this interface, so you don't have to waste time going to the bank interface, like, say for example, right-click, withdraw, and then close before you get the teleport tablet. Instead, you can go right-click, collect, break. Now, this takes you, assuming you don't have the Grand Exchange option for your Varrock teleport, so if you've done the diary and set your teleport to go there, you're going to have to turn that option off for this. Do so by talking to the guy that gave you your Varrock armor. Just start on the eastern side of the center of the fountain. Firemake as you would usually. And, like I said, very boring, not very much to see here. Just keep on moving. You'll eventually get back to the bank. And the trails that you take here, like from the fountain center I'm saying, end up putting you right by the doors to the West Bank of Varrock, where you can just go to the bank booth, collect more logs, break a tablet to get back to the fountain, and the cycle just keeps repeating itself after that point. So overall, this is... It saves a little bit of a time, probably a quarter to a half minute per bank cycle. So if you consider... Well, let's say it saves a half minute, let's be optimistic here. That means that you're going to be using up 120 tablets per hour of time that you save, and 120 tablets at their current price is like 105 or 110k. So if you make 100k an hour, which is pathetic, that's like less money than you would get killing chickens for feathers on a fresh account with no stats. It's probably not even as much money as filling vials with water or breaking down granite from 5 kilogram to 500 gram blocks. Like, just so pathetically easy to get that much money per hour or better that there's no way that you can say that this is not worth your time to use this method. Like, the only way I could see this not being a time saver is if literally every server had somebody firemaking in the Varrock fountain. And if you consider that you can only do this on members servers, I guess, yeah, that cuts out like probably 80 or 90 of the possible servers, but honestly, what are the chances that on all 70 to 80 remaining servers that are pay-to-play, what chances are there that all of those are going to have somebody else firemaking? And really, if it comes down to a problem of that, I'm sure there's probably some other time of day that you could play instead of when you were, when it'll be less crowded. Like, for example, I'm recording this a little past 1 p.m. Local time, which is Eastern, so, like, if you consider that this is a Eurocentric game for the most part, and that puts all of the times 5 to 7 hours ahead of mine, you're looking at like 6 to 8 p.m. local time. This should be peak hours for everybody except for the US crowd, I would think. Because this is like when people are getting home from work and after school activities. They should have eaten some sort of meal by now. They should be in their leisure activities, which in this case would be RuneScape. So, surprisingly, not very many people do this, so there's no crowding. Obviously, with better logs, you get faster experience rates. And I'd say that until you're about 10 to 15 levels above the minimum for a log, although it is still worth firemaking the best logs you can afford to do just because it's faster, you shouldn't expect to always get instant lights until at least 10 to 15 levels above minimum. So for Maple, we're talking like 60 firemaking would be a good time to expect it to be fast, as opposed to having to stop and watch the animation. Which obviously means that you shouldn't expect to go and start lighting magic logs at 75 and think that they're all going to catch as fast as these maples I'm burning. Anyway, this was just, I had to raise the skill up from 50 to 71 as part of my process of getting the requirements to get the crazy sword on my pure. Which, I don't even know if he counts as a pure 50 defense, going to be 52 once I get Ancient Curses, but that's not happening until I can afford 95 prayer for Turmoil. So, call it whatever you want. I still consider it to be a granite pure, but I'm not going to be ridiculous and say, oh, 70 defense, that's a Barrows pure, because that's just a lie. That's not even a pure, that's just a main with restricted defense. Because, honestly, 70 defense, you can wear almost every piece of equipment in the game. There's no reason that you should be calling that a pure. That'd be like back when RS1 was still new and rune equipment wasn't even out yet. If somebody stopped defense at 30 and called themselves an adamant pure, like, I don't think the concept of a pure was out yet. But back then, everybody's stats were so low and the equipment available was so weak. That was just like, you know, like, you have such high stats and such good equipment, how are you considering yourself being gimped in any way? Is what I'm trying to get across here. Like, if you have access to all the best stuff in the game, you don't have any self-imposed restrictions. At least not any that give you a significant advantage. Well, I guess that's just an argument of terminology. Like, if you really want to go in depth, you could say that a pure is only a character that trains a single stat exclusively, which would mean that if you have experience in any skills other than hit points and your one chosen combat skill, you're not a pure. Which, let's face it, nobody does that. Every time I see an Obsidian Mauler of some sort, either they fail miserably because they can't hit on you and they also can't tank your damage, or they have defense too. And if they have defense, then they're no longer a pure in the purest sense of the word pure, because they have experience across multiple combat skills. And then that also factors in with prayer. If you want to go really old school, you could say any account that has high enough prayer to use any of the 15% boosts or any of the protections or anything like that, that would automatically make it a prayer beast. And just the whole thing has gotten so muddled. I'm just going to consider this to be a restricted defense account. That'll be my new term for this. But anyway, this is how I'm training firemaking. I've seen, although they didn't explain it, other fairly prominent players have been using this method, which is where I got the idea from. And I figured, well, may as well have somebody explain it, you know? Because, after all, not everybody is even actively paying attention, and of those that are, some might not even understand why this works, or any of the thought process behind it, so I gave it my best shot. Hopefully this can help you, and I guess this will be goodbye until my next video comes out of some sort. So you can listen to me then. Take care.